Good day, everyone. Well, we see the market attempting for the third time to break to new highs on the S&P and the NASDAQ. Third time may be a charm. It certainly was for the Russell 2000, which is a risk-on index, which closed at new highs yesterday. So we're seeing a number of leading stocks that have woken up and offered us actionable buy points over the last several days. So the market internals are looking about right, as they should. So basically, I think the next stop for the market is going to be new highs based on all the indicators. Of course, barring any sort of sudden calamitous news event. But other than that, we have quantitative easing on full bore, as much as it has ever been, and all this liquidity's got to go somewhere. Bonds are paying out 0%, so a lot of the liquidity finds its way into stocks. There's more liquidity in the system today than there was even in 1999 when the Fed unleashed loads of liquidity to deal with the impending Y2K problem. So that's all to be said that this old bull market, 6 years now, well since 2009, is QE driven. So who cares how long it is? I mean, if the technicals are telling us that it wants to go higher, then it's going to go higher, most likely. Now, since December, this market has expressed a lot of reluctance to go higher. It's been, this is a one-time type of pattern we saw in the major averages where it was just chop and slop in the worst way possible between December and early February. Fortunately, that's a very rare pattern. I mean, I'd be hard-pressed to see a time when the markets have done something like this. And then since February, the markets have gotten a little bit tighter and a little more constructive. And now we're seeing a supplement of good leading stocks that are carrying us forward. Now, some of these leading stocks are the one I have up right now, such as GWPH, the cannabinoid stock. This one we've suggested before, and it got very tight in there and offered what we call a voodoo day, where it gets very tight and quiet in there. Then issued a pocket pivot on this day, which we released a report on. Now it looks like for those who got in, you got a nice little cushion here. The structure is sound on this stock. The story is quite good. It's a leading stock in its space, so it looks to me like it does want to go higher. Now let's look at there's a couple other ones in this market that have done pretty well, or actually look like they have the potential to do well. Here's one. This is Vasco Data Security. This is a stock that's rounded out its basing pattern, then issued a pocket pivot yesterday. It also had a pocket yesterday, actually. Yeah, that was the pocket pivot. It had a viable. You could call it a viable gap up 2 earnings reports ago, and then the last earnings report. This was 2. Let's see. Let's go back a little bit here. Yeah. Yeah, so there was your last 2 earnings reports ago, and then you've got the recent earnings report here, but it was very sloppy all over the map there. So that wasn't exactly actionable, and then the stock proceeded to retest lows in the basing pattern, and now is rounding them out in a constructive manner. So that is one that is potentially on target. We also have Mobileye. This is a stock that has been. Let's see here. Okay, so this is the stock that does an interesting technology. It helps cars identify when they're about to hit something, or well before it, shall we say, hit something. It's a pretty cool technology that's being placed into potentially all the automobiles because it will save lives, kind of like seatbelts do. I have one in the car I drive, and it's definitely, if you're maybe asleep at the wheel or not as awake as you should be driving home late at night, this is a great technology. If you're, for instance, having a chat and you just for a second, don't pay attention to the road, it's way ahead of you. I mean, it's great. It's great stuff. So this one's rounded out, trying to run out its basing pattern, and it looks like it too has potential for higher prices. Then we've got the twins here, LinkedIn and Facebook, the two giant internets. They're mega caps, and mega caps tend to back and fill. They don't trade in clean patterns like we might see a smaller cap name. You can see that with LinkedIn. It's interesting because it had a gap up on its recent earnings report, and then has attempted to constructively round out its pattern. It had a little mini gap just a few days ago here, and Facebook as well looks like it's attempting something similar. It also being a mega cap with a $230 billion market cap, looks like it's gotten more tight. Let's pull it up. In its pattern, so it's getting more constructive in there, and then had the pocket pivot on this day. So it looks like it's retracing and potentially will be going higher. And finally, there's INFN, and this one is I'd say this is more like a mid-cap stock. If you look at the price and the volume, you can see that the dollar volume is not overwhelming. But it too has the potential to go higher here with the gap up here on its prior earnings report, and then it has issued pocket pivots that look constructive. So apart from the number of good stocks we're seeing and the action of the major averages, the question also is, how's the global economy doing? And as we know, it's not doing very well. So, and you can see that reflected in commodity prices and gold and whatnot. The price of oil is still struggling to find its low. I usually use USO just to give me a quick indication here. As long as the global economy continues to lag, we're going to have all this QE in the system, and there's no sign that QE is going to end anytime soon. So you have all this liquidity, and that does propel the markets higher. On that note, I'll turn it over to Gil.
Okay, so let's see. Lots of stocks are acting well, and I think the same principles apply in terms of buying on roundabout pocket pivots, bottom fishing pocket pivots. If we look at, obviously there's VDSI's turn, but even if you look at something like GW Pharmaceuticals, you had this big move here. It goes nowhere, but then it comes in and sets up real tight right along the 10-day. And I watch for stocks when they're trading minus 35% below average volume and holding tight. You don't have to run a screen on that. All you have to do is look at HGSI, or even if you have MarketSmith, and all you do is you look at your buy list. So I'll just pull up my buy list here and take off the filter, no filter. And what we can see here is the percentage change in this column, intraday percentage change of volume based on versus the 50-day moving average of volume. So you start at the bottom, you can see what's drying up down here. ComScope minus, come on HSI, move it, there we go. ComScope minus 82%, Cadence, some of the names I like, let's see, this MA, this one's drying up along the 10-day moving average here, you can see that, so that might be in a voodoo spot to buy. Paycom, we've looked at this one before. This one's kind of sloppy, but notice how it's now violated the 50-day moving average, which probably sets up a turn back to the upside. Grubhub is pulling in just a little bit today on lighter volume, minus 68.1. So this is how you can find or look and see which of your stocks on your buy list are pulling back on a big dry up in volume. You can see some are moving up because you've got the green here on the price change. Some are moving up on lighter volume, and that may not necessarily be what you want to see in terms of a voodoo pullback. They got to be pulling back, obviously. So these are all coming in here on light volume. Let's check ZTS. You can see that's very tight along the 10 and the 20 day. Even Tesla pulling back today on minus 51.8% volume. Let's take a look at that. You can see that that's had this sort of bottom fishing pocket pivot here. Remember what I was talking about? You see three distinct groupings of what are called bingo bars, I guess, or oversold indicator. But I just noticed if you get three and sometimes even four, you're getting a little bit long in the tooth on the downside, and so you can turn off of this sort of formation. So you get the first thing you're going to see is obviously a bottom fishing type pocket pivot. Now you're pulling into the 10-day line, and volume is drawing up. So in this particular situation, if you want to try and trade this thing, earnings come out on May 6th, then you're looking for some kind of pop off the line after a voodoo pullback. So that's really what you're playing for. And a very typical name in that regard is Cyber. Blow this turkey up. On the voodoo pullback the other day, and we mentioned it in the pre-market pulse piece, the voodoo pullback into the 10-day line, that was quite viable, and then you get a nice pop moving to higher highs. You're getting some resistance from the left side, so that looks normal. So I actually sold this morning at, well, let's see, 63.66 on the pop, just because I figured it's probably going to back and fill a little bit. The other thing to keep in mind as a dynamic for the stock is the fact that you still have the IPO lockup expiration, so insiders can sell. And I think as you come up to the highs, you probably caught a lot of overhead supply here. You're likely to see it back and fill, and maybe it continues doing so into earnings. So it's acting well though, and if you bought it down around the 50-day, again on the voodoo pullbacks into the 50-day, which that's the first pullback into the 50-day since this breakout here. That's a good entry point, and if you're long from that point and you want to sit with a position, that's fine. You don't have to jam huge positions like I do and trade them. So there's many ways to skin a cat here. Let's see. So let's run. Somebody has a question for you, Dr. K. You ready?
Sure.
It's is your mobile eye an add-on, or was it integrated by the manufacturer?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I actually have no idea which it was. I think that you would think that the company has the ability. Obviously, it should be an add-on and also integrated both ways, because it gives the company most flexibility. There's going to be a lot of cars that want this technology, and so it should definitely, I think it's without a doubt going to be an add-on feature for any automobile who wishes to use it.
Okay, not really relevant, I guess, to anything other than the fact that stock is, well, let's see here. Let's fly through some stuff here. GoPro, you had a gap up yesterday. I think this one
doesn't really matter, but no, it did come with the car. Obviously, it came with the car. It never came on afterwards. So, but yeah, I was just thinking about that, because obviously the market demand up for this product should be quite high, and as long as they have the right distribution channels, they should be able to do very well with it.
I mean, I like the action in the stock, so that's all I need to see. Yesterday was a decent gap up. Sort of, you can even play it as a viable gap up. The low, I think, is 43.95, something like that. Here's another gap up you had yesterday. GoPro, that's a pocket pivot through off the 50-day. I would look at it that way. You had some other pocket pivots in the stock coming around, so it's acting okay and it's holding up. Stock gapped up yesterday, but closed near the lows after Barron's came out with a headline saying that they thought the stock was a little pricey or whatever. But the way I look at Barron's, if those guys really knew anything about the market, they'd be trading it instead of just writing about it. So, and that's my general rule for anybody who just writes about the market on a daily basis. So I like eyes. I think this stock's going to try and turn. We'll see. You got sort of a weird looking cup and handle, and you've had some pocket pivots in here. A lot of buying off the lows. Stock had a gap up on big volume here. Now it's hanging tight. Volume's drying up today. I think we're running, let's see, we're running minus 70% on the volume right now. So I think this thing has potential to pop. And the technology, it definitely works, and the market is huge. they have a first mover advantage. It's basically what do they call it, optical prosthetic or something like that, which essentially allows blind people to see, people with retinitis pigmentosa, which my older brother actually has. He was also born deaf, so he's deaf and blind, although he does seem to get by pretty well regardless. I mean, Helen Keller did, right? So she became famous too. Anyways, in any case, I think this has a lot of potential. And this thing came public, a lot of fanfare, and of course it immediately tanks. And now it's trying to turn. So I kind of like that. And it reminds me a little bit of this one too. Similar sort of, it comes public, Verint Solar, residential solar company. And now you're coming around. You see here you get the pullbacks down into towards the 20-day line, and here on top of this flag, and now it turns and it's going to new highs. Today, SunPower announced that they're in bed with Apple on a China solar deal, or building a big facility in China. So now you got SunPower moving, and it's breaking out of this little base here. Volume is pretty good. First Solar broke out yesterday. So the whole solar group is acting pretty well. You're even seeing Solar City trying to come back, but I think that's probably the dog of the group. Some people talk about Canadian Solar, and yeah, that one's doing well too. I think my view is the big name in the group is First Solar. That's the big stock name. SunPower is good as well, but it looks, but just based on the way they act, this is the leader. But maybe you can play both if you like solars. So Mobileye tried to sell. I thought it kind of gave you a gift this morning, selling down to the mid to low 45 zone. You can buy some. You maybe use this. I mean, Dr. K, can't you treat this as a Bible gap up?
Yeah, you can. So you can use the low as your ultimate,
43,
maybe with a little porosity. But actually, it's up there quite a bit, so it really shouldn't. You really shouldn't take much porosity if it goes all the way back down to the low of that trading range yesterday. That's a problem.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to see that. So, let's see. So we looked at cyber. We can see Palo Alto Networks is it's hanging out in the base. I don't know if it's a double bottom, what you call it, double bottomed cup with handle, I don't know, but whatever. The thing is, you get a volume pullback into the 10-day, 20-day line here. If you want to buy shares, that's where you buy them. So Dow's just turning green now. Trannies are up strongly as well. So, a lot of people have been twitching about the trannies. And, my view is, well, haven't you heard of the ugly duckling theory? It looks ugly, so in this kind of market, when something looks as ugly as the trannies do right now, where are they going to go? They're going to go higher probably, so just like everything else. I don't really think of that as too much of a factor. It doesn't get me wigged out about the market.
Yeah, I think the thing, so much liquidity out there with all this QE, it's been invalidating old methods that used to work under non-manipulated environments. So because you've got all this liquidity sloshing around, yeah, something can look pretty ugly, can turn into an ugly duckling, and yet still be profitable simply because it's fallen too far to the point where it does look ugly, but the liquidity comes in and rescues the day, and then you get a bounce. And so that I think is the rationale behind the ugly duckling, the success of the ugly duckling theory in this environment.
The illusory market. So I guess you call it. Let's see. Okay, so that looks okay. You got FireEye. You notice here you violate the 50-day moving average, but that's the low, and it turns around on a boomerang type setup, gets back above the 50-day and the 20-day. You have a pocket pivot here. It pulls into the 20-day, 50-day yesterday on light volume, and moves higher. Now you're just kind of tracking back and forth. We'll see what this thing does. Baba is another one of these trying to turn. You got a pocket pivot here on the turn. Now it's kind of settling into the 10-day. I think, though, the one maybe to be in this space, or should have been in a while ago, and we looked at this down along the lows as it was having a number of pocket pivots, is JD.com, which is going after Baba, and there's some news today about them competing with them in some area. But this thing's basically came around a cup and has broken out to new highs, and you saw the turn down here, and once again the ugly duckling comes home to roost. Netflix is, oops. Let's see, Netflix, that's a buyable gap up. I guess the low is 530. So I tweeted earlier that was the low on it. So if you like it, you might jump on it there. A little extended now. Data is trying to get through the 100 level, but it's kind of slowing down. It's most definitely going to have a pocket pivot unless it reverses. But we can see that the place to buy it was after you got. Remember, I showed this cluster of 5-day pocket pivots last week, and I thought that was constructive. And then you pull into the 10-day on a volume dry up here, and that's where you want to buy the stock. So you probably could have bought it yesterday or the day before, and now you're popping. But chase it here. I guess you could if you're, if you think Livermore's 100 or century mark rule is going to work here. But we'll see. So. And here's Loco. Loco's another one of these bottom fishing situations, trying to bottom and showing some good numbers on the weekly chart. You can see the bigger volume on the weekly chart down here. And you had the pocket pivot gap up here, and of course it pulls down into the 50-day with the market and then turns around. Now it's heading higher. So that's looking okay. I talked about this one last week, coming out of here just very tight and trying to go higher. Salesforce is holding in very tight. It's been hitting my voodoo screens as well over the past several days as it pulls into the 10-day and the 20-day, and that looks like it's set up in here. GoGo, here's another classic situation of stock turning around. You undercut these lows, dip below the 20-day. Now you come back above the 10-day and the 20-day, which is constructive, and you get the voodoo pullback in here, and that's where you buy the thing. Okay. Yesterday, I guess you would call that, was that a pocket pivot? I guess, but see, I'm not really interested in a pocket pivot. I'm not going to buy a pocket pivot. I'm looking for this sort of action. And you have to kind of work it out in your head that, okay, you had a sharp move to the upside. You retrace half of that, and it's also undercut this low. Gets back above the 20-day. That's constructive. Now it pulls into the 10-day and the 20-day on light volume. That's where you want to be buying. And chances are it's not going to be all that exciting at the time because the market may be coming in. But if you see a stock you like and a stock that's been something of a leader, at least in the near term, and it's pulling into a logical area of support on light volume, and the market's pulling in, and I would say the last couple days, or rather, let's say Monday and Tuesday of this week, you had a sharp run up off the 50-day here. So you're up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, Monday was the 6th day, and you find some resistance at the peak. Okay, that looks very normal. Then you pull back for a couple of days, and you trade up off the lows on Wednesday. That's constructive. Volume picks up slightly, so that's constructive. And then yesterday, you're up pretty good on a pretty sharp increase in volume on a relative basis, and that looks like it wants to go higher. So you got to use these pullbacks as opportunities to buy stocks, and then things will come in, as the market's pulling in. So we've been down mostly today, and you got some of these names pull in. I think you take advantage of a lot of that to enter positions in stocks that you like. Twitter is hanging out. It's really not going anywhere, but I think this mostly serves to illustrate, like Facebook, it serves to illustrate the fact that you really just don't get a lot of upside push with breakouts. The breakouts are just too obvious, and they don't go anywhere. That's why you don't see First Solar today on a breakout. There's no big follow-through. The place to be buying it was here. I guess this would have been on Tuesday on the voodoo pullback into the 10-day, 20-day moving averages, and you see a number of them setting up along the line, and that's where you buy it. Then you get the pop. Now it's pulling back. Now you can think about you want to add to your position, or if you're not in it and you saw this one, maybe you want to come into the stock here on the pullback. So, that's really how you have to handle them. And chasing strength in this market is just going to get you behind the curve, I think, pretty quickly. So, be judicious and don't be afraid to buy things if you can buy them near, with a nearby reference point on the downside for a stop, just to limit your risk. Anyways, let's keep going here. So GoGo, I like that. That's almost classic. Ambarella is pulling in along the 10-day. The thing here is you're somewhat extended, So if you were in a position along the 10-day, say down in here closer, like down here, I might like this a little bit better, but right here you're kind of extended, so maybe the name to come after here is Gopro, but we'll see. Grub-a-dub-dub, just hanging along the 20-day. I was happy to see it come up yesterday, although the volume wasn't huge. But you did see this outside reversal. But, there's an outside reversal. Oh, my God, that's ugly. And in the old days, before everybody knew every single chart pattern that there was in all of the Technical Analysis 101 books, that would have maybe been negative. Now the stock just turns on and goes back above the 10-day line. It's hanging out. And what you see happening here on the weekly chart, it's all pretty normal. The big cup, okay, you don't even start forming a handle until 3 weeks ago. All right, so now you're forming a handle. That's what's happening. So you understand that. That's the context of the pattern right now. And you're basically watching this thing as it pulls in. Now, I think earnings come out on early May, I think it is. So you've got that to contend with. But it is setting up in a cup with handle, and what does that mean? Maybe on earnings the thing busts out to new highs on a big gap up. I don't know. I know that the service is becoming more popular, and more restaurants in my neighborhood or around where I live are offering the service. And it's even convenient if you're going to go pick up. So let's say you're out. I like to eat Lebanese food, so there's a Lebanese place in my neighborhood. And if I'm out somewhere in the afternoon, wherever, and I'm on my way home, I can use my iPhone, and order on Grubhub, and then just swing in and pick everything up at the place because it's all there, all ready to go. So, I like that sort of action. Anyways, let's see. Facebook is like Twitter. You have a breakout, but it's right on top of the bay. It's going nowhere. But you know what? Today I think you're looking at, let's take a look at this. I'm going to look at my list so I can reference these. Let's go. I don't know what's up with HCSI today. It's giving me it's acting slow today. Some days it's slow and some days it's not. Minus 2.3% on the volume level right now. So it's starting to drive. So you're going to want to keep an eye on this. Maybe this turns around. Maybe it doesn't. So anyways, let's see. Market off, Dow off 8, NASDAQ down 2. I think we're hanging in pretty tight considering the fact that you launched above the 5,000 level on the NASDAQ yesterday, which is constructive. I think if they can hold that and move higher, then you may be in a good position here to continue higher. We already looked at VDSI. Starbucks, again, pulls down into the 58. So this is really, if you look at this, you had the breakout here, and there's your first pullback into the 10-week line, the 50-day line. That technique tends to work pretty well in the market because it's basically, think of it as an ugly duckling buy point. You're buying something on weakness rather than on strength. And that tends to work pretty well. Let's see here. LinkedIn, to me this just speaks to the slowness of the whole social networking group. So you have the three big stock social networking names. That'd be Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Slow as molasses, but what you're seeing is a pullback here, and let's see if we go check over here on LinkedIn. We're running minus 38% on the volume. So you are getting a voodoo pullback in here to the 20-day, dipping just below the 50-day after this sort of gap up type pocket pivot. You actually had one pocket pivot here and then another gap up type pocket pivot here. And that sends the stock higher, but of course you're going to run into some overhead. Now you're pulling in on live on. So you're seeing Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn not going anywhere really, but on the other hand, are the pullbacks just setting up some upside for opportunistic investors who are watching the volume levels decline as the stocks settle in a little bit in their bases into areas of potential resistance, or I'm sorry, support. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I don't know if it's the updates or what it is on HSI. Somebody says slow here too, but usually it's pretty fast, and I'm not sure what's going on with all of that today, so whatever. Software, Skyworks Solutions rather. You see this pulling back. There's sort of voodoo-like action here. If we look at SWQ, well, minus 34.4%. So that, that's coming down to the lows of this little flag. I don't know when they come out with earnings, probably pretty soon. Let's see. $4.30, so in a couple of weeks. Cavium, another semi. Yeah, Sandus is getting raked today, so some of these are under some pressure. But this thing's trying to come out, but not really going anywhere. Let's see let's go through some of the biotechs. You had Zyop pulling all the way back to the 10 level, roughly, the dip below it, and of course violated the 50-day moving average here. And now it's back to the upside on a pocket pivot, pulls in this morning, and is viable off the line, I think. So this is the whole cat, I forget what it's called, cat something cancer technology that's being utilized by a lot of, you know anything about this, Dr. K? It's being utilized by a lot of biotech companies. The CAR-T, that's it, CAR-T, cancer technology. You know anything about it?
I haven't looked into it in enough detail, really. But obviously the chart pattern speaks volumes in the sense that it looks like it's got lots of potential.
Yeah, so this is one of them.
Quite a cheap stock for a while, under $10, and
Yeah.
It's been on the inside, and it's a biotech, so you put all that together, and you've got a lot of risk on your plate. But it's interesting enough actually to I'm going to look into it in a little more depth because it looks to me with a $1.3 billion market cap. It's on the borderline of becoming something more substantial.
Yeah, it's allied with Intrexon, which is pulling along the 50-day. Again, here you have a breakout. You pull back into the 10-week line, and probably here that was a good entry point. But it's hanging along. I think earnings come out at the beginning of May. I think it's May 6th. And this looks okay, like it's trying to set up to go higher in a 6-week base so far. But Zyop and Intrexon, I think both of the companies a couple of days ago announced a deal with some company where they're getting royalties. Intrexon is basically a intellectual property company. They license their intellectual property, their technology, their biotech technology, I guess you would call it, and they get upfront licensing payments and then back-end royalties once a product is developed. So, kind of a lower risk way, I think, to be in the biotech business. IPHI, what is this, a cheap little biotech? Well, it's in a base, so you could look at this as a pocket pivot if you want. Maybe it's another one with exciting technology. ABMD, Voodoo pullback today. Looks like it's into the 20-day after this viable gap up, but it hasn't gone anywhere. So I don't know if that's a problem or what, but that's just the situation. I'm watching Mobileye trying to go positive, so I think that's my biggest position right now. I knew I should have just put my whole account into it this morning when it was trading 45.50, but oh well. Hindsight is always 20/20. DSL I already talked about. Trying to push higher. Almost had just missed a pocket pivot breakout yesterday, but it's going higher. I think the whole solar group is probably looking good. So instead of chasing something like this, maybe you look at buying something on the pullback like First Solar after yesterday's pocket pivot. And you can see it's got some overhead to contend with here. I think earnings come out in the beginning of May. So let's see. This MDXG we've been looking at, it's kind of a dog. See that? Now it's all the way down here. Biogen, you had this gap up. You came all the way back in, and it's just hanging along the 10-day. Now, the ugly duckling would say you buy the stock on this pullback if it's holding along the 10-day, and you had a pullback a couple days ago into the 10-day on very light volume. Voodoo type volume, and looks like it wants to go higher. So see FireEye is turning around. I have some of that, but it was buyable here a couple days. I mean, I think you can buy it in here. It's probably going to go higher. I think the whole group is going to go higher. Cyber pulling back a little more. That looks normal on an intraday basis. And the way you handle this stock is you just kind of stock it when it's pulling in. And then it runs up for 2 or 3 days, and then you sell into it, So you catch it here, you sell into here, it comes in, you buy it back here, and then you sell into the end. It's almost like clockwork, I'd have to say, There goes Mobileye now, 46.75. I think that stock's got a lot of potential. I was studying this, and I should point out, somebody emailed me on it on this day, which 3 days ago, which would have been, what, Tuesday. And they asked me, they emailed me and they want to know what I think of stock. So just so you all know, we don't provide personal investment advice. So you can't email us and we're going to advise you on what to do with the stock. So I think, so I'm looking at it actually Tuesday night and thinking, well, this looks like it might be turning. And of course, if we go to my handy dandy HCSI chart, now it's speeding up now, so maybe. But you can see there's 3 distinct groupings of oversold bingo bars. I tend to think that Ian can come up with something a little better than bingo, but I'll have to talk to him about that. So, but I think it should be called ugly duckling bars myself. But but what you've got going on here is, okay, you had a nice move after it came public, because it came public here. Zoom has a nice run, then breaks down, chop, 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 and we set up again. And now you get a lot of volume off the lows. And this is in middle of March. There was a filing on 315. Looks like that would have been, I think, 1, 2, let's see. Actually, I don't know if it would have included this, because I'm wondering, I'd like to see in the next filing who is buying this thing off the lows here. And you can see you have a nice move. And this actually looked okay pulling into the 10-day. And then the next morning I see it gapping up. And I just went and bought it yesterday and it moved higher. And now it's trying to move higher again. But I think this thing is trying to turn. And it fits the whole ugly duckling theory. And this kind of pattern could very easily work and go higher. They're going to earn 39 cents this year, and then I think that goes up to 70 next year. And that seems pretty decent for a hot technology company. So I guess I'm going to have to get a car with that on it. So I'm probably for my daughter who's about to get her driver's license. Okay, very little keeps me up at night, I have to say. And for those of you who have teenagers, maybe you know what I'm talking about. But the prospect of my daughter driving is maybe one of the few things that keeps me up at night. So, but maybe I need to get her a car with that, and I'll feel a lot better. So, sleep better. So, anyways, Swir. Yeah, Swir. That's right. I saw that one as well. That's been on my list. Swir, roundabout pocket pivot there, and you can see there that's a normal looking base, and it comes all the way down to the 40-week line. Of course, we violated the 50-day long ago, so there are stocks where the 50-day violation will work. But I think if you see the 50-day violation and then the turn back to the upside, now you're looking at a boomerang pattern. And if you do sell on a 50-day moving average violation, and the stock goes and turns around on you, but you can discern a buy point, like say with Netflix, and you could have come in here or here, maybe even here, but then of course you got to sit through earnings, which would have worked. So, but if you do sell a stock on the basis, or even short a stock on the basis of a 50-day moving average violation, assuming it's in position to be shorted, then I think you can always turn around and buy it back. And I never have a problem buying something back that I sold incorrectly, and then buying it back higher, because who cares? It's where it goes from where you buy it, not where it is to where you compared to where you sold it previously. So remember that. Let me repeat that one again. When you buy a stock, what matters is where the stock goes from the point at which you buy it. If you had sold it previously, it doesn't matter where it goes from where you had sold it previously. So that's a pretty basic axiom in investing. And so if you want to buy a stock back on a proper buy signal after perhaps getting shaken out lower, that's fine. And don't be afraid to do it. I know a lot of people won't do it, which I think is just stupid. But somebody says, train her to drive defensively. I'm actually sending her, I'm going to send her to the Bob Bondurant School of Performance Driving.
I was going to say, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, she's actually pretty excited.
Really interesting.
But she'll only go if she can drive my Beamer, so I don't know if I want to let her drive my Beamer. So right now it looks like she's getting a Honda Accord. So somebody says, you know Bob Bondurant, Scotty? So can you give me a deal? They have a school in Arizona, I understand, and that would be the place to go, I think. But we'll have to talk. For me, anything. That's what I want to hear, Scotty. By the way, I just wanted to know if you gave your girlfriend a ring yet and you're engaged yet. So, you really need to get that one done. Um, Somebody says, scariest day of my life was when I watched my daughter drive away for the first time by herself. I could see, I could see that. So, anyways, GoPro coming in. I think you buy it on the pullback. They come out with earnings at the end of May, so I think there's a lot of time for this thing to go higher. So I've got some buying power. I may lay into it. I didn't have it overnight. We'll keep an eye on it. Let's take a look at a 620 here and see what's going on. There's our friend Cyber. Whoops. Come back here. There you are. This chart is slippery. You ever had that problem? Slippery charts? Let's see. There's Gopro. Oh my God, that's a 620 sell clearly this morning, and it's flying around. I don't know. You look at it on the daily chart, so you got to kind of watch this. Maybe it gets a little bit. It's getting a little bit to the MACD stretch here. So, by the way, somebody emailed me wanting to know, they wanted a 620 chart view on HGSI, and I've never shown anybody a 620 chart on HGSI. It's a real-time chart, and even though HGSI updates not in real time, but it updates with a slight delay. I think it's like 10 to 15 minutes. It's not going to do you any good as an intraday chart. So I just thought somebody's not really paying attention there, because I've never shown a 620 chart on HGSI. The only place I get it, and I would assume that you can get it on any oh heck, what happened to my NASDAQ chart? You can get it on any real-time quote system like eSignal. That's where mine comes from. Yeah, I don't know. This is getting a little bit oversold on intraday. Maybe this is a spot to come in. Let me see what the volume looks like. Gpro right here. You're running minus 36.7. So it is a low volume pullback. And I don't know, maybe everybody's scared of it because Barron said it's overvalued. That's all I know how to say. If there was no such thing as overvalued, Barron's would be 5 pages thick. So that's kind of where they come from. I thought it was interesting though, because the stock was upgraded day before yesterday, and it's been upgraded a couple of times by analysts who are saying that the stock has an attractive valuation. Okay, so go figure. I guess one man's attractive valuation is another man's, or newspapers or publications' overvaluedness. I notice it's turning a little bit here, so is everybody jumping in and buying it? That's it. Let me get in first, you guys. So just hang out a second, will you? Then you can push it up. Let's see. Scariest day of my life is when my 18-year-old son bought his own car. Actually, I would be impressed by that. That's something you want to see your kids do something on their own. Anyways, let's not sit here and waste time yakking about our kids. Let's see. Zeltique. Okay, everybody, go away, please. There you go. Okay, it's coming back. The the ugly duckling boomerang, just kind of drifting higher. 5-day pocket pivot here. Yesterday, coming above the 50-day line, and now it's pushing higher. But they deal with belly fat, and then you got Kythera. I don't know how you pronounce that. Biopharmaceutical. They deal with chin fat. So I guess baby boomers don't want to have belly fat or chin fat. And these guys have an injection that will remove your chin fat. Okay, I wonder what the long-term effects of that are. But you have a pocket pivot here, stock pulling in on a voodoo volume drop. Maybe just watch it on a 620 if you want to buy it. But for my money, I think you got to own the eyes. And somebody agrees with me because it's setting up, and you got a voodoo pullback. I think it's just going to the moon. This thing's going to $100. Buy it now. You'll all be thanking me a year from now when you're able to buy a small island. So, is that a bold prediction or what? Or maybe I'm just talking out my rear end. Somebody says, I've got plenty of fat, going to lose it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, do what I'm doing. It's basically giving up cheese and red meat and chicken and pork and just eating fish and things that grow. So, of course, don't ever read The Secret Life of Plants if you're a vegetarian, okay? Just because that will change your whole view of plants. So they're actually quite intelligent. So my kids always love the demonstration where you plant, if you have an open spot in your yard, you plant a bean. in the ground. You could plant 2 or 3 of them just to make sure one of them germinates, and then put a stake maybe 3 feet away. And when that thing pops out of the ground, guess what it does? It goes for the stake. And then if it's growing halfway to the stake, and you put the stake on the other side, guess what it does? It turns around and goes back for the stake. So you tell me, how the hell does that thing know where the stake is? It's alive. It has perception, so you don't need eyes. Anyways, now if we could just get people like that to help us in the stock market, use plants in the stock market with their 6th sense or 7th sense or whatever. Yes, Scotty, your girlfriend is a long-term investment, so okay, boy, that sure brought a lot of... I became a vegetarian not for health reasons, but because I hate plants. I think that's pretty funny. Kill them all. Let's see. Okay, what's going on here? More stocks. Gilead, I'm looking at these. These are all trying to come back. So again, the ugly duckling theory is in force here. Celgene, it's still ugly. And these all look like shorts to me earlier. Now they look like they all want to come back. Juno, this one, very volatile. It's a wild ride, but it's been working since I think we sent out a pocket pivot alert here, and it's moved considerably higher. We looked at Zyop, trying to push higher. LCI is one we haven't looked at for a while. Again, the roundabout formation is your best move, and or your best buy point, because it generally sets up the best move. That's why I'm interested in these names, that are setting up here, like Gpro, Mobileye. You look at Loco, you look at JD is turning. How many others here can I come at? GoGo has been one that's worked pretty well. And so I'm very interested in that sort of setup when I see it. So, and if you're screening for pocket pivots on HCSI, and it'll pick up 5-day and 10-day, you'll see these things as they're turning. The pocket pivots in and of themselves may not necessarily be actionable types of situations, but it is giving you a sense that the thing is trying to turn and it's improving. And so that's where it gets on. You could create a special buy watch list of roundabout formations in process, something like that, and keep track of them. And I think that's where some of the best moves come from in this market. And if you're busy, over there buying breakouts and counting distribution days with your finger up your end, you're in the wrong place. So, as Dr. K said, the old rules are kind of out the window these days. Oh, by the way, if anybody has questions about Gilmore Report, please send that to info@gilmorereport.com. I actually have a house plant that answers all my emails there for me, so I don't have to bother with it. So please, this is VoSI, so just so you know. Let's see, any other wild questions? Apple, let's look at Apple. Holding tight along the 10-day, 50-day, and 20-day. So the triple moving average confluence, also known as the TMAC, for those of you who like festive acronyms, like Can Slim, or UDB, which is an ugly duckling boomerang setup, or, well, whatever, or VDU instead of voodoo. All right, let's see. So Apple, maybe heading higher. Let's check the volume level. I believe it is on my buy list. There it is. Apple minus 33.4%. So guess what? Apple's in a buy position here on Voodoo pullback. So anticipate. Let's see. Amazon. Looking at some of the big stock NASDAQ names. Boy, Dr. K, you got shootout at the OK Corral Day. I've heard a couple of those bullets whizzing by. Where are you? Are you back? Are you visiting Syria again?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
We were talking about the Middle East earlier, though, ironically. But no, this is just some true blue alerts going off, actually revolving around the XIV model, which, as they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And, when all seemed, when I was just so fed up with the markets December and January, it was just throwing the model around for, like a prize fighter would handle a glass-jawed opponent. I hit on something that seems to be working very well since then. So again, I think I've told everyone, it's in beta test, and the results finally are looking up to snuff. So
Okay.
stay tuned for this one.
All right, good to hear. Let's see. Amazon, let's see, where was I? That looks like it's saying to go higher. I think earnings come out next week. Baidu, is it a short? Is it a long? It doesn't know. You short at the top and you buy at the bottom. Channelingstocks.com. Anybody remember that from the old days? Google sucks. Intel, they came out with earnings the other day and beat, so I wouldn't buy this. I know you got bottom fishing pocket pivot type action here, but I wouldn't be buying it. Netflix, of course, continuing higher on a viable gap up, and this is also a breakout from, I don't know, is it Punch Bowl of Death, the late stage ugly cup with handle that's going to fail? I don't know. All I know is if you bought it this morning with a 530 low, you could have bought it at around 532, 533 when I tweeted that this morning, and you would be doing pretty well so far. But just remember, that's only a 2% move, so 5 points is about 1%. Price line, notice it's if you look at it, it's in a big long base, and it's trying to come back here, and you get a pocket pivot here, and a 5-day here, and a 5-day here. So, you know, clusters, think of clusters. Let's see. Splunk. Here you have a pocket pivot here. It stalls, but it pulls back on the voodoo pullback here. But actually, it pulls a little more. Notice how you get some support. The volume picks up slightly here. See, you can see that picking up slightly there. And then it turns out it goes higher. I think you're heading for a pocket pivot today. And this is trying to come out. You know, a lot of these are, even Workday. And I think the reason none of these, because I've talked about these as shorts, and I've been short them from time to time and made money doing so, but a lot of these names they can't become shorts because the market, you just don't go into a full-on bear market. Now there will be stocks here and there that have downside moves that are shortable, but you never really got anything that sustainable other than the oils like the Silica holdings that we shorted last year at the end of the year. That was a great short if anybody was paying attention. And so they act like they want to go higher, and they do that. You see data doing that. Splunk looks like it's going to have a pocket pivot. Workday is another one that I was looking at shorting, but it hasn't had any pocket pivot, so I don't know if it's shortable here. I think the leader in this area is probably CRM and Oracle. And here you have an outside reversal to the upside on this one today, which looks pretty good, so it looks okay. Somebody asked, is V trying to come back? I don't know, call it up and ask them. I don't know. I don't see anything there, and I wouldn't trust that gap down move. So, short is for professionals in this market. Actually, shorting is for people who want to trade for 1 to 3 days max, and that's been my experience, and that's pretty much it. So, let's go Mobley. I call it Mobley. I don't know what. Great Googly Mobley, or is it Googly? I forget. Anyways, looks like Baba's trying to turn around here. Starting to get closer to, you're down 6 cents right now, 84.61 bid, trying to turn here. And I think you got to buy some of the Gopro in here. You don't have to buy huge, and just give it a shot. I think it's going higher. I think they lead their market in terms of product recognition and quality of products, and I think in the end that's ultimately what consumers will look at. You know, it's just like, to me, like the iPod. Remember when the iPod came out, and of course you had Microsoft came out with the Zoom, but people look at the first mover and then the brand and the quality, and they put that together. I think that's what they base their decision to purchase something on, is more so than price. And there's some Zoom cam, I guess, that's much cheaper out there. I don't know much about it. My kids actually know more about it than I do. I sometimes get the feeling they would put cameras on their heads and have them on throughout the day, so everybody could see what the hell they're up to. But anyways, maybe that's what I need them to do, so now that I think about it. But in any case, I think it has some potential here. And remember, like, you know, I always think about stocks that were really hot and they have a huge move up and then they have a decline. The pod setup, you know, where it comes back. Everybody gets short the thing because it's the end of the world for the stock, and they get shorted, and you know, they're going to make a ton of money shorting because it's going to zero, because everybody's going to be able to make a camera. And you get a lot of shorts in the thing, which one makes me want to ask, what is the short interest here? Just checking, 2.6 days, so about 14 million shares on a 38 million share float. Okay, so that's a fair amount of short interest out there as of the last reported date, which was March 31st. There'll be a new report coming out in the next 4, 5, 6 days, I believe, but pretty decent short interest. So I think it can drive it higher, and it may back and fill in here for a little bit, which I think is normal. But if I started playing around with it down in here, and I catch some of these moves and I sell them, and then I buy the pullback and then sell it, and look at buying the pullback. I already bought some actually, so I'm back in it, and we'll see what happens. But I think that has potential, and it is the ugly duckling setup. Look at the S&P here just real quick. You see it's just basing, and I think we're setting up for a potential move. I did want to point one thing out. I know that a lot of people at this point were telling me they saw a fractal head and shoulders formation. And the new book on short selling talks about fractal formations, but you know what? Don't start getting carried away with it. It's kind of like with pocket pivots, right, Dr. K? Everybody, you show someone a pocket pivot, and the next thing that they want to try and figure out pocket pivots on weekly charts, on 5-minute charts, on 30-minute charts. They get carried away with something to the point where I think it's kind of ludicrous. So don't get carried away with the fractal head and shoulders. Head and shoulders formations and indexes do not work, so forget it, whether it's on the daily or the weekly chart. Go ahead, Dr. K, you were going to say?
You can start seeing patterns where they don't really exist, and that, of course, is the challenge of technical analysis, because the mind wants to create a pattern where there is none. And of course, the fractal nature of the markets means logically you would think pocket pivots would therefore work on a smaller or larger time scale. But the problem really comes down to risk-reward, of what you're dealing with. And dailies have been demonstrated to work, but if you're looking at a weekly, I've never been able to see on a risk-reward basis weekly pocket pivots work at all. And then on a smaller time scale, you still have problems. So there's other tools in your tool chest that you can use for smaller or larger, longer time scales. I mean, certainly weekly charts. If you're oriented that way, there's nothing wrong with looking at a weekly, using a weekly as your primary guide, but have different tools at your disposal. Pocket pivots on a weekly are really it's too late to be buying pocket pivot on weekly charts.
Yeah, but and it's just you express a concept about something within a particular context, and everybody wants to start applying it to everything, and I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make. Let's see, somebody's asking about ANIP. Well, it looks like you're trying to break out. If it gets a pocket pivot, you might think about this as viable. Nice base setting up in the weekly chart. So maybe they're the CAT-C cancer technology. So Fizzler coming back. First Solar trying to come back. If we see it, let's take a look on a 5-minute. We're about to wrap it up here. I hope I've given you guys some interesting ideas. Here's Gpro. See the comeback? Oh, come on, you guys, buy some more. Push it higher for me. But let's look at First Solar. Yeah, it's trying to turn here. It's going to turn. It's going higher. It's going to 70. Earnings come out. You hold it through earnings. Gpro comes out with earnings on the 28th of April. I think. If I get a little more cushion on it, and maybe if I don't, I may hold at least a small position in the stock into earnings, because I think they're doing better than people think. I'm going to have to go do my survey, but I was at Dick's Sporting Goods, and they have them there, and they sell pretty well apparently. So, but we'll see. Could you take a look at Taser? Yeah, I actually like Taser, and I thought, it could have been you get these pocket pivot here, pocket pivot here, pocket pivot here. So you're getting a cluster of pocket pivots around here, and then you get a viable gap. But now it's breaking out, and this looks like it wants to go higher. So I have no problem with it. It looks. I wish we had put it on as a pocket pivot here, but here's this gap down on earnings. But what I noticed when you see a pattern where you have a gap down like this and a breakdown, and then it just stops, and the volume dries up, and then you start to see on balance volume shifting in favor of the upside, and it sets up, and you're seeing clusters of pocket pivots, and you're seeing voodoo pullbacks as it tries to come back. those are buyable. And in this case, Taser's a big news-oriented stock as well. You got to keep that in mind. But I think that's buyable in hindsight. So it's looking great on a breakout if you would like to buy breakouts. Anything else? I think that's pretty much it for me. So, I'm giving you some voodoo pullbacks to look at, and gosh, you could have made a buck on Mobileye during the. Here's what it looks like here. This thing's going higher. It's over the last hour. It's moved from mid 46s above 47 now. I think this thing's going to rocket. I think it's going to at least 500, Dr. K. So. Can we put out a press release on that? That we initiate coverage of Mobileye with a buy a shitload rating and a price target of 400. How's that? Am I allowed to use that word?
Yeah, that sounds like 1999.
There you go. We were talking about this before the webinar, and we can conclude with this concept. Is that there's more liquidity in the system than there ever has been in the history of the markets. And the last time we saw a huge amount of liquidity being injected into the markets was in 1999. And again, I'm going to talk about this story in mid-October. It's October 23rd, and Bill O'Neill calls me up and says, this market's through, blah, blah, blah. It's terrible. Everything looks terrible, blah, blah, blah. And then 4 days later, we get a pocket pivot, and I go from being up 36% to being up over 1,000 in 2 months, a little over 2 months. And so nobody at the firm, we talked about this last week. Dr. K, you didn't have any inkling of it. We were all getting frustrated, all of us. And then you just had this huge opportunity. And I got to tell you, for me, that 2 months was a life-changing 2 months. Because now I can sit on my butt and trade my own account and mess around with websites and notebooks,
the markets tend to fool the majority of the time. And certainly it did it in expert fashion by October. From April till October, the NASDAQ traced out a pattern it has never traced out before or since.
Yeah.
Very volatile and choppy. People get cut up left and right. I had my biggest drawdown. I know a number of people who actually went broke or, just threw in the towel. And even O'Neill himself, he was fed up. And
yeah.
I love that about the markets, though, that they will challenge you to the brink. And I've been challenged to the brink in the last 5 years, the markets have gotten worse and worse in terms of their challenging nature, to the point where they were pretty useless in terms of market timing between December and February, just recently. And I thought to myself, this is funny. This is the exact pattern I was drawing on a piece of paper. The markets would have to do this to become useless. But markets never stay useless, and lo and behold, since then, there have been profit opportunities that seem to work well with my XIV model. So I want to keep it running for another couple of months, and then probably do a launch of a beta version on the website. But what that difficult period served to do is it helped me connect dots in the model. So I have a fail-safe that's totally tolerable against the reward of the model. So I'm pretty excited that this time this model should be a go, and hopefully will be one of the most profitable models that I've come up with in terms of market timing. And that said, not only was 1999 October the turnaround month, but if you remember, so was October 1998.
Yeah.
Because we had a brutal summer bear market with the NASDAQ lost something like 36% from peak to trough. And I remember everyone was going short left and right, and then I was the one lone guy going long against a lot of people at the firm. Who are not trading for Bill, but they were so convinced the market was just going to fall off a cliff, and I saw otherwise. And the last quarter of 1998 was one of my most profitable quarters in the history of my trading. So it just goes to show you, when the market wants you to give up, that's when you got to remind yourself, okay, I'm being tested here, and I'm going to just going to bear the tsunami and hopefully surf it.
Do you remember in October of 98, you and I were in my office meeting with an institutional client who had come to visit. He's a friend of yours as well. And we're sitting there, and I had actually been short in October 1998. That was actually a very nice 3-month bear market. It was brutal. And the news came across that Greenspan had raised or lowered interest rates. And so immediately I told the client, excuse me for a moment. And I called the trading desk and said, cover all my shorts and then go long this, and this. And that's what you do. You turn. When you see it, you go with it.
I remember running back to my office, because I already had a watch list and
Yeah,
I'd already
and
started.
you took off.
You know,
That's right. I remember that. And I was down 32% at that time. I ended up 86, I think it was. So, the whole point here is that anything can happen in the market at any time. And as Dr. K has said many times, the opportunity of a lifetime in the stock market can come every couple of weeks. I would add to that at when you least expect it. And that's what makes this all exciting as far as I'm concerned. So if you start getting down on the mouth and you get fed up and you think everything sucks and you want to kick your dog and your cat and yell at your wife and your kids, focus, because you don't know, it could be right under your nose. Anyways, on that note, we're going to finish up. Thanks for showing up, everybody. We'll catch you next week. Take care. Oh, one other thing. I will be on Carter Mansbach's radio show at 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's Carter, C-A-R-T-R, Mansbach, M-A-N-S-B-A-C-H. If you search for him on the internet, you can get on his radio show and listen to it live. I'll be on at 2:30 Pacific Time. All right? We'll catch you guys next week. Take care. Have a good weekend and rest of the trading week.
so long, everyone.